reason why we wanted him with us was to talk about the concept of green bonds, green certifications, and most importantly, the topic of this session, and that is the question of whether we should trade or tax carbon emissions. And this is going to be an extremely important part of the future of how we deal as a private sector towards climate change. Dr. Walid, if you can join us, please, from Isla. So, we have a fantastic group of experts with us, great friends, Mohamed Mostafa Agamy, Vincent Gaines, a dear friend, again, a supporter of the dialogue, contributor to our efforts here, and Mujbaskela personally was incentivizing me, saying, you know, go, let's go for it. Let's not close this up. On the other hand, you've got stock exchanges that are delisting companies that are not working within this concept. So the question is not just about how to tax and how to trade, or to tax or to trade, but what are the mechanisms or even the combination between both? Mohamed Mostafa Agamy, you are legally entwined in all of this. How do we cost it? How do we put it? How does it go up and down as a part of the international market? I mean, when we talk about exchange of carbon, it becomes a new commodity. How do I quantify it, give it its value, the same way that I do with shares and things like this?
Okay. First of all, if I just make some kind of definitions or identification to the matter, because I'm coming from a practical or a practice matter, and when we see actually the projects coming, mainly from the oil and gas and the production of carbon dioxide, and maybe the oil and gas is the highest industry where it's actually giving a lot of producing a lot of carbon, and this is actually the worst in the world. However, the technology and the innovation over there are actually trying to make a lot of reduction to the emissions of the carbon emissions. However, back to the story, I think the first initiative came from Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol 1997, and this protocol actually bring countries to think about the carbon dioxide, the climate change, how we can take the benefits from two initiatives actually to reduce the carbon dioxide, and on the other side to make investment and to make financing as a kind of approaching to such an initiative. So we are having like socially, environmentally an impact that we need to reduce from a social and environmental way, and from economic side, how also we can leverage this this as a kind of opportunity. So usually when investors, banks, and all economists thinking about risks, they are taking the why from it, or thinking about how to grab the opportunity over there. So after actually Kyoto Protocol, like the non-profit organization came out from the international trading system, which actually they talk about a standard agreement about the ERPA, which is the emission reduction purchasing agreement. And they actually put a kind of standard terms and conditions where the matter could be controlled, where we have like a seller who is actually have the initiative to make the carbon reduction over his product, over his project. And after this kind of production, he has a kind of, he actually meet the target or the standard target or the international target, or whoever the project or whenever the project and whatever it would be. So this calculations, which is exceeding his approach or exceeding his targets, he can sell it to another one who can go and finance his project. So we are now talking about like two opportunities. Me as an investor have a project I would like to have a finance, and this finance actually will have a very great impact socially, economic, and also environmental. And on the other side, the buyer would like to make an investment, not only financing, but sometimes refinancing to the project. And by this way, the ERPA, the Emission Reduction Purchase Agreement, would help a lot to make this kind of purchasing. And actually it depends. Depends on whether we already have this carbon credits, sometimes we call it carbon certificates, and then this kind of transferring this credits that the other finance buyer could have the leverage. Sometimes would be another company, for example, French company, under the climate change or under the French pledge, let's say, 2019 had been signed, like among 100 French companies signed the pledge exactly. So they hadn't met the target yet, so that's why they are having a very promising opportunity to grab this carbon emissions from another country or even from the corporation who had met the target. This actually framework help a lot to make this kind of exchange. So the needs are coming from different perspectives, from different sectors, let's say, and then the carbon became as a kind of commodity at the end. We can have actually a differentiation between two things like greening or green financing and financing green. I would say that the greening or the green financing is a kind of framework where organizations, countries, government are pushing to make the framework and make the scalability of environmental laws, taxes maybe, and this kind of pushes in order to make the way in rush, let's say, because the climate change actually has a very, very great impact over all the countries, whatever they know, they notice or not, they are signing the Paris Agreement or not, they are committed or not, but the climate change is a human impact at the end. So this kind of incentives or this kind of framework and collaboration from organization, countries, etc., putting this under the framework. And then we have a financing to green projects, where I think this is the role of finance, funds, banks, bank investments to reallocate it's not about initiative, it's about a real new opportunities. It's a green area, let's say, in terms of projects, so we can have a different way actually of projects. We are talking about projects that make mitigation to carbon. We have projects that can produce renewables or production for energy efficiency. We have actually sustainable water projects. We have transportation in green. We have housing in green. A lot of perspective that we can leverage. We can even change our the people habits into a new projects, and we have startups who can innovate new platforms, new tools to calculate every single movement around us in order to make the awareness much better. So this is the way actually how the green bond are, if it's actually got in rush and became a massive and became the awareness much better. We're talking about 1997, so we're now in the 2020. So I think the matter became much more serious, where we have to take care about. And then at the end, the opportunities, those who are talking money, the money over there, the opportunities over there, and the green finance actually would be on top of all things. Those who are thinking new opportunities, it's a green field actually to work whatever. Even for the oil and gas companies, when we see now the transformation of producing oil and gas, nowadays they are changing their perspective to go to renewables and efficient energy. The gas flare, one of the top item or top article in the oil and gas sector, how to use the gas impact again into the rigs and to make a recycle of the gas, not just to flare it over a kind of machines or something like that, how to pump it again and use it in the new production in order to leverage and make incentives, a lot of incentives in the production of the oil and gas. And the oil and gas actually, according to the Paris Agreement, I think they have a very great impact and enforcement to rechange the world as well.
Mohamed, thank you. That is incredible. But again, for a simple mind, just for me to tie things together, this new commodity, this commodity that is called carbon emissions, we'll call it carbon for now, is where is the similarities or differences of what we had gone through over probably the past decade in trying to get what used to be a government monopoly on the output of electricity or the sale of electricity on the grid or providing electricity on the grid to now having private companies that are what we are saying selling at the, or even producers like cement producers that have to create their own energy with additional output or residual output, they are allowed to sell it back onto the grid. And it took us a very long time to come to that specific agreement. And tariff laws with Agadir. Is this how we are looking at the carbon exchange per se? Would it be the same model if we drew it? Residual carbon, how would it be different?
It's actually much beyond than this. It's beyond the energy sector. It's actually came across a lot of projects. For example, just in the morning when we talk about Netflix and so we are talking about IT, we are talking about media, we are talking about different sectors where the energy actually is one of the big components of it. And the opportunity here, how to mitigate the carbon and how to make a profit and how to make, by this emission reduction, you can apply for the criteria to be eligible and then have the certificate, the carbon certificate. If you are exceeding this emission credits, so you can sell it to the oil and gas company, or you can sell it to another company even working in FMCG or pharmaceuticals. So they can take the leverage and provide it at the end to their countries or their monitoring and verification reports in order to say we did our job. We're already financing other projects to help people, to help the climate change and to help and to save the world at that.
I guess one of the fundamental differences is that there is no physical grid, which means the carbon emission trading would be borderless versus having to have an infrastructure of a grid to sell back the residual electricity.
This is the point, how to meet seller and buyer together.
Yes.
And this is, I think this is the main role of the stock exchange, or let's say the clearance house, to meet the seller and buyer. And this is what we will talk about a little bit. I will take actually a kind of reading by example if we take in consideration UK. The matter actually, if we look at UK as a milestone beginning of from 2001, we'll find that the UK actually established the organization which is the emission trading system. And after this organization has been launched, they actually worked on the first act for the Climate Change Act, which is actually adopted later on by the Parliament in 2008. And this act actually is organizing and governing the way of carbon reduction targets into by legislations. In 2009, later on after 1 year, the first green bond has been listed on the London Stock Exchange. So if we just make some kind of orientation or just highlights on this, we find that the government actually is pushing by a different leverage. So one time by just an initiative, ETS, and then by the act of climate change, and then pushing to make the first green bond to be listed in the London Stock Exchange. In 2011, it has been the first innovative fund coming like by 4 billion USD, I think sterling. So as a climate fund. And then later on, the first green investment bank has been launched in 2012. So UK actually is leading by example in this area. In 2015, the first project, which is the Transport for London, issued the first green bond as the first UK public agency where money can now we are talking about money and how to make money from this fund. And in 2019, they are talking about the Climate Financial Risk Forum to mitigate the risks of the exchanging and the trading of the carbon certificate. Absolutely, it's well known that the procedure before getting the certificate or carbon certificates is not that easy, because for making this kind of certificate we have gone through a lot of process, monitoring, evaluation, lobby evaluation. Sometimes we are talking about a second review from different consultants, from an authorized consultant, and they are very, very rare in the world actually. And then how this certificate would be as a kind of evaluation. So we have again a scoring for such a certificate. So we have like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So all this mechanism, it's not a kind of unilateral laws across the globe that we can measure, but we have like UK, we have like French MRV, all this differentiation, but there is no actually a one unified laws that we can work on. The investor is more smarter, so he can catch and get the opportunity wherever it will be. And I think that the investor would, if he catches the opportunity, make the scalable balancing and measures, he can find out how to get the opportunity into a real profit or a real money, taking in consideration that banks and investment banks are looking for such kind of investors and such kind of opportunities where they can engage and finance or sometimes refinance as well.
So thank you very, very much all of you for being with us.